changes and government turns hostile towards the United States, then the inevitable question comes out, who lost, whichever the country it is, who lost Iran? And so that we may end up in that situation. But I hope we don't have to get into that kind of debate in Washington. Maybe it's wishful thinking on my part, but I hope that what will come out of this is a free and democratic election, a new government that's representative of the will of the people emerging eventually. It may be very rough along the way, and that government will have a close and strong relationship with the United States because we have so many interests in common.
And Mr. Indik, just to get your thoughts on this, some analysts have said that the mere resignation of Hosni Mubarak would not necessarily be a problem, but if the entire regime falls, this would lead to a period of anarchy in Egypt, a bad period, whether a new regime comes into place. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think a period of anarchy is not something that the United States alone wants to avoid. I think the Egyptian people would want to avoid that. They have a big stake themselves in a return to order and stability under a new, more representative government. Anarchy in Egypt would, of course, be bad, not only for the people of Egypt, but for the ripple effect that it would have around the region. It's true, the United States has made clear that it's time for President Mubarak to leave for the sake of his nation. But I think there's a hope in Washington that the military can play a role that the military have played in Tunisia, of holding the ring, not firing on the demonstrators, working with the political opposition in some kind of national unity formation.
But so far the military in Egypt hasn't shown any signs. I'm sorry to interrupt you, sir. So far the military in Egypt hasn't shown any signs of wanting to play a role in this movement, because from what we've seen today, the military in fact standing by and watching these clashes take place between pro and anti-government demonstrators. There have been a lot of plans. Plan A from Mubarak was, of course, reshuffling his cabinet, naming a vice president. Then there was Plan B, which he announced yesterday he won't take part in elections in September. What's going to be Plan C, in your opinion? What's the way out of this crisis in Egypt?
Well, there's a best case and a worst case. I think you described the worst case just then, that the military basically moves in to restore order on behalf of the Mubarak regime. And then the Mubarak oversees what we know is the kind of election process that will produce some successor to Mubarak, but it'll be Mubarak too. The best case scenario is the army recognizing that it has to find a way to avoid a confrontation, to find a way to work with the opposition, and oversees an orderly and peaceful transition in which the opposition is involved, and therefore the transition itself has credibility, so that free and fair elections can be held in September and a new government that has the consent of the people can then emerge.
All right, thank you very much for your insight, Martin Indik, from the Brookings Institution in New York, joining us there live. Thank you very much for your time. Well, let's stay with this international aspect of the story. We'll talk about that in a moment, but right now you're looking at live pictures from Cairo again, Tahrir Square. The violence, of course, unfolding in Egypt is causing concern across the border in Israel. The quote of one former Israeli ambassador: when it comes to security, we have got the same interests. Nesrin El-Shamaili reports on how those interests could be under threat.
For more than 30 years, Israel has had a partner in Egypt willing to assist in its own security concerns. With Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak's regime under threat at home, that is now in question. Mubarak's security apparatus has policed Egypt's border with Gaza ever since Israel withdrew from its Gaza settlements in 2005. It has also maintained a quiet border between Israel and Egypt. Israel is now worried about the possibility of those two borders becoming loose. For Israel, the possibility of an open border into Gaza is a non-starter.
If there is a change, and there is going to be free smuggling of weapons to Gaza, it is of course dangerous. And the other matter is the border between Israel and Egypt that is quite open today, and if it becomes to be something that on the other side there is no one accountable, it is again quite dangerous for us. But these are more tactical concerns. The strategic concern is the rise of the Muslim Brothers.
Though the peace between Israel and Egypt has been a cold one, largely rejected by the Egyptian public, it has served the interests of both Mubarak and Israel. Curbing the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt and curbing Hamas in Gaza is an Egyptian-Israeli vested interest.
Fighting radical Islam, Hamas, security of Egypt, it's also connected to us, you see? So we have more or less, from the point of view of security, we have the same interest, Egypt and Israel.
Of lesser concern is cross-border infiltration. Around 130,000 African refugees have already illegally trickled into Israel from Egypt. This number would likely soar if the border wasn't properly manned. With such security fears sounding alarm bells, it is easy to understand why Israel sees its security directly linked to that of Egypt. Behind the few official words of support for Mubarak, the general feeling here is that his regime is inevitably coming to an end. The main concern now is for whoever replaces Mubarak to leave the peace treaty with Israel as is. Nisreen Al-Shamaili, Al Jazeera, West Jerusalem.
Well, that's Cairo's Tahrir Square, which was a scene of unprecedented violence this Wednesday as pro- and anti-government protesters came head-to-head with the army standing by and watching. Now, according to Egyptian state television, a minister quoted on Egyptian state television, the Minister of Health, in fact, is saying that at least one person has been killed and 403 injured in Tahrir Square. That's the official line. But from what we've been hearing from some of our correspondents and some of the witnesses that we've been speaking to, many more people could be dead and several hundreds indeed injured. But so far, the line from the health ministry in Egypt is that one person has been killed in today's clashes. Let's now speak to one of our correspondents on the ground who